Last year alone, I ran a 100 miler, completed an Ironman, got my blue belt in BJJ, and doubled my business all while sleeping 8+ hours still. So if you stick with me in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to share my exact framework that I use to manage multiple interests. And if you stay to the end, I'll give you guys a menu of 30 life resume building activities that you could pursue next. Here's the 3 rock framework that I use to manage multiple interests. Number 1 is choose. This is where you'll write down every possible dream, desire, interest, big goal that you might have. And you're going to pick the biggest, scariest, most exciting rock to pursue at the moment. You'll see why I'm calling them rocks here in a minute. But yeah, the secret here is eliminating all other options once you have chosen. Number 2 in the framework is sequencing. This is how to determine when to pursue certain goals and how to stack them when momentum is really high. And then number 3 is the 80-20 principle, but not what you're thinking. This will show you how to research only exactly what is necessary within your new endeavor, and then how to drown in the reps or the action side of things to be successful in that new endeavor. Okay, so the point of this video is I'm going to dive into the tactics on how you can try to become this modern day Renaissance man that we all want to be. But before I do that, this video is for the people who are super ambitious but feel stuck in life because they are interested in way too many different things. I'm one of those people. I've dealt with this problem for most of my life. And look, I was probably in a lot of your guys' shoes when I was in my early college days. I was partaking in primarily NPC behavior. I was just drinking and partying and, doing whatever early college kids do. And then decided, even at that time I had so many interests, and was super ambitious, but didn't know exactly how to take action on them. And over the past decade, I've been able to achieve some big things like playing football at Ohio State, competing on American Ninja Warrior, running 100 milers, doing Ironmans, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, skydiving, motorcycling, hiking through the Himalayas, traveling, business, all this different stuff. And it's because I was able to break that loop of feeling stuck. Your life is just a series of experiences. So if you want a cool ass life, if you want to build a badass life resume filled with adventure, this is for you. You should pay attention. This video is trying to help you maximize your life fulfillment in whatever form that takes for you. So obviously all the interests and the goals that we pick are probably going to be different, but this will hopefully help you figure out which things to pursue in what order. So we've probably all heard the terms polymath, Renaissance man. Nowadays you'll hear stuff like the hybrid athletes, or generalist, or jack of all trades. And really, polymath just means learned in many things. Renaissance man, same idea, just 200 years earlier with Leonardo da Vinci. So this idea has been around for a really long time. But at the end of the day, why is this idea interesting to so many people? It's because you only have one life, and you want to stack as many cool things as you can into that. And who doesn't want to be a James Bond type of a character who's badass, that is competent in a bunch of different areas of life? The quote that I personally like best around this concept is the quote that says, "You can have it all, you just can't have it all at once." For me, this translates to, you can be anything you want to be, or you can do anything you want to do. You just can't do it all at once. That's why this 3-rock framework that I'm going to show you guys and dive into will hopefully help change your life, because it'll allow you to stack these things. And the truth is, there's not enough time in the day. There's just not enough time in the day to reach truly high proficiency at multiple disciplines at the same time. There's always going to be trade-offs, but you can cycle between these disciplines at different phases of life, and then wind up building that badass life resume, which is extremely rich in experiences. Concept 1 that we're going to talk about is choose. That's what we called it. So the first step here is basically you're going to write down all of your dreams, goals, interests, anything that's on your bucket list, and essentially brain dump everything you can possibly think of in this phase. And here's a secret, people. When you have big, scary goals, you're going to feel some sort of purpose, especially when you start to pursue them. And when you start to pursue them and you feel that purpose, all that other bullshit you were doing before, the partying, the distraction, procrastination, all that stuff's going to go away because it's now been replaced by this larger purpose and this feeling of chasing these difficult things. You just won't have the time for that other stuff, and you won't have that that FOMO or that feeling that you're missing out because the new thing you're pursuing is so much more exciting than the old life of partying. Most of the partying stuff is just there, filled in because you don't have anything that you're chasing. So the first step here for the concept of choosing is brain dumping everything. Now, what's important during the brain dump process is to split these. Every dream you write down, you want to write down everything. By the way, this could be a list that's 100 things long that might be interests, and you want to split them into different buckets. So for me, the buckets I usually do are health and fitness. Money would be one, money or career as the second one, and then the third one would be like relationships. And then I usually have another bucket called other, and that's where you could put something like creative or random. But choose whatever buckets you want, whatever your life buckets are. And you're going to want to decide here at this phase, once you get everything written out into these buckets, you want to decide if you're going to choose an interest or one of these pursuits as a hobby for pure fun, or if you want to choose it a discipline for the sake of achievement. I cannot stress how critical this piece is if you're deciding if you want to do something purely for fun or if you're choosing a discipline that you want some achievement or outcome. A fun hobby is something that you can suck at and there's no outcome needed. One of the achievement-based disciplines that you're going to choose is you want a specific outcome, or down the line you hope to be good at it. So why this is important is if you have the wrong intent, it's going to mess things up. If you're doing something just for fun, then maximizing your efficiency at that thing and trying to be productive with it is totally the wrong way to go about that thing. So if you are doing something for fun, like the time that it costs you does not matter. It's the point of it is like you're getting fulfillment of doing the thing. So if you find something you love and it's just for fun, throw out the rest of this advice. And it's totally okay to oscillate between, challenges, adventures, interests that you're doing for fun and ones that you're doing for achievement or outcome related purposes. So both are going to enrich your life experiences. So I do recommend doing both, but we're going to focus more on the achievement side at this phase. So if you're new to this, like, picking these big interests, I would always recommend going with the biggest, most ambitious, scariest goal that you can possibly go after, because they're all going to take you the same amount of time. And the bigger, the scarier, the least likely you think you're going to be able to actually achieve this goal, the more exciting and fulfilling that thing will end up being in your life. So I always recommend going after the biggest, scariest possible thing. And I always recommend starting with something physical too, like the 100-milers or marathon or hiking this big mountain or an Ironman or whatever. Those are really, really easy to measure. They're really easy to get the ball rolling in your life and get you to try something hard and physical that's new and different. Those are just a really kind of easy first win for people. So I do recommend that route. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to actually choose which big interest, scary goals you want to focus on now. So this is highly personal. I obviously can't tell you what to choose. Your life's going to be different than mine, but I can give you the framework that I like to think about. There's this amazing book called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. And in this book, I'm going to paraphrase essentially the lesson that he talks about. So there's a story about a teacher who, comes in front of a classroom. He has this jar. It's the jar of rocks story. Most of you guys have probably heard this. If you haven't, I'll try to run through it really quickly. Basically, the teacher is trying to demonstrate something to the kids. There's a bunch of big rocks on the table, and there's a jar, then there's pebbles, and then there's sand. He tells the students to try to fit everything inside this jar. Students try, and some students put the sand in first, and then they put the pebbles, and then the big rocks don't fit. They try a bunch of different variations. A bunch of them don't fit, and then when they put the big rocks in first, and then the pebbles, and then the sand fills in around it, all of it fits inside the jar. So the point of that story is that sequencing of these things matter, and the representation in that story is the big rocks are the big things in your life, and you need to prioritize those first, and then the pebbles are, the more routine tasks in your life, and then the sand is the small stuff like errands or emails or whatever else. And so taking care of the big things first allows you to fit all the stuff into your life as opposed to filling it up in the wrong order. So the whole point of that is sequencing is important. But what Oliver Burkeman in his book points out is that in real life, and what you'll notice with the list that you just wrote out, there's way too many big rocks. The teacher, the reason it all fits in the jar is the teacher selected the perfect amount of big rocks that will fit inside that jar. But inside your life, there's infinite number of big rocks, shiny rocks that are attractive for you to pursue. And so the whole point is that you cannot pack it all in no matter what. Sequencing is still important, and we're going to talk about that in the next step. But there's no amount of sequencing that will ever let you fit all of the big rocks inside of your life. Certainly not all at once, but not even spread across your entire lifetime. And so choosing and picking is a very, very important concept, and that's why we're talking about it first. So just understand that when you do choose and you decide on one of those big goals, it's equally as important to eliminate everything else for that period of time. So elimination is one of the biggest things here. And choosing beats sequencing every single time. Every rock you place means deliberately choosing to leave out the other shiny rocks. And so I always like to say work on 3 big rocks maximum during this period, ideally in different buckets. You don't necessarily want two big rocks in the fitness bucket at the same time unless they're complementary goals. But you basically need to spend your time filling that jar with intention. And once you've kind of selected those, it's okay to not think about the other ones for right now. You need to focus on the ones that you have here. All right, concept 2 we're calling sequencing. So obviously we just talked about the rock story. We just said that choosing beats sequencing every time, but that doesn't mean that sequencing doesn't matter at all. Sequencing and stacking your goals, both within a daily time frame and within a lifelong time frame, does play a huge factor. So we're going to talk about sequencing and stacking. So the first thing we're going to call sequencing, and essentially this concept just means if you're in your 20s and you look at your resources, and let's pretend the resources are time, money, and health. When you're in your 20s, you probably have a lot of time, and you probably have good health, and you probably have no money. And I'm just, painting with a broad brush here, but if that's not your scenario, okay, then you can do different stuff. But if you have time, money, or do you have time, no money, and you have health, okay, then great. This is a good time in your life to sequence goals that might be running your 100-mile race, right? Like these are things where you should try to pick things that align with your resources. If you're 70 years old and you have deteriorated health and you have money at this point and you have time, so health is the thing that's missing. Okay, well, this would be the time to write that book and to, talk about all your life's lessons. And so the reason sequencing is important is you're never going to be able to fit it all in. And understanding that lifts a huge weight off your shoulder. But sequencing things appropriately at different stages of your life will allow you to fit more things in than you could have otherwise fit in. So that's really important. And then the second concept here is stacking. So stacking goals is kind of like a version of sequencing, but on a shorter time frame. And so the way I like to think about this is stacking goals just means that let's say I'm training to run a 100-mile run, and I did this last year as the example. I scheduled an Ironman like a month and a half or 2 months after my 100-mile run that I was training for, because I was able to kind of double dip on my conditioning level at that time. Once I had finished the 100-mile run, I healed up for a couple weeks. And for the Ironman, I knew that I was going to be bad at the swim. So I spent those next, month and a half basically just swimming, and was able to then go and do the 100-miler and then an Ironman right after that. And so the point being, I was able to stack those goals instead of doing them at 2 totally different points in my life when I may not have as much time, I may not be in as good condition, maybe I don't have the health. That was a really easy win for me to stack back to back for things that I wanted to accomplish. When I was in college, I'll give you guys one more example. when I was in my early college years, I got my dream job at the time, which was working at Rogue Fitness. And yeah, I was working at Rogue because I wanted to use their gym. They had a sick gym, and I was like, all right, that'll be a good spot to work for the summer. I can work out and train up to try to make the football team and do all this different stuff. And so at that time was working at Rogue, ended up making the football team at Ohio State, and then also in that same time period had competed on American Ninja Warrior. And that was because I was able to stack all those things together. My career, and two of my big goals at that time were all related to fitness, and it was an easy thing for me to kind of stack up. So again, stacking these massive goals together that have common threads is another way to knock things off at that period of time in your life. Final concept is the 80-20 principle. So we have all heard of the 80-20 principle before. Pareto principle is just suggests that 80% of the outcomes come from 20% of the inputs, essentially. In other words, a small percentage of the inputs typically lead to a majority of the effects. And to achieve the level of mastery that is required for achieving big goals in multiple disciplines, the 80-20 principle is only partially useful. So it's extremely useful in the learning and research phase, and it is not useful at all in the action phase. So let me explain how to use the 80-20 principle specifically for, trying to be a polymath, a Renaissance man, trying to achieve these multiple big goals at the same time. So the 80-20 principle in the research and learning phase is very important. So when you're new to an endeavor or big goal or a new discipline, this means figuring out what to focus on and how to improve quickly at this new discipline. So when you're researching and you're learning, you don't have enough experience in that new endeavor to make the research process really worth it to you, because you just have no experience for it to grab onto. Like if you're trying to learn jujitsu, all the stuff they're telling you and the concepts don't make any sense because you have no experience with what they're talking about. And so doing a lot of research at this phase is actually not worth your time. So what you need to do during the research phase is you need to do the 80-20 and figure out what is important for me right now. What are the actions that I need to take in this new endeavor? And what are the glaring weak spots that I'll probably have within this endeavor? And once you know those two things and you have enough to create an action plan, that's all you need to do. And you need to move on from the research phase and start to take action. I'll give you one more example. For me, when I was doing my Ironman last year, my goal for the Ironman was just to finish one and move on. I'm not that interested in becoming the fastest Ironman person and being a pro and whatever. And so for me, I don't need to understand everything about a bike perfectly. I don't need to understand the aerodynamics of it and, have the perfect training split to optimize everything. As a matter of fact, if I'm pursuing multiple big goals at the same time, I literally don't have time for that shit. So for me, the 80-20 research process for the Ironmans was enough to buy a bike and set a basic training plan. And I realized pretty early on, I was like, okay, I'm going to be the worst at the swim because I don't do that at all. The bike, I feel like I can just kind of brute force my way through. And so the swim, I was like, all right, I need to spend most of my time there. And so my 80-20 was coming up with the action plan of like, all right, here's the things I'm going to do on a weekly basis. I'm going to tilt it more heavily towards swimming. Here's enough of what I need to know to buy the right size bike for myself. And after that, I stopped researching it because there's nothing else for me that's going to be that useful at this stage. I just need to start taking the actions and literally go outside, bike, swim, and run. So most of my time, because I don't have that much time that I'm allocating toward this goal, is, an Ironman takes a lot of time anyway. Like the swimming and biking and running every week, it's going to take you, 10, 12, 15 hours, whatever the time is that you're doing those activities. So that's all the time I was willing to allocate toward. I don't have that much more time for the research stuff. And so the 80-20 of the research is being efficient about, what you're spending your time on and figuring out what the actual actions are you should be taking in that new endeavor. Now, if you're trying to win the Ironman, this is not good advice, obviously. If you're trying to win, you need to do everything you possibly can, and you should put more time and preparation into this. Like if I didn't have other stuff in my life I was pursuing at the time and I wanted to be the best at the Ironman, of course I would do more research. Could I have done way more preparation? Yes. Should I have swam the Ironman wearing rubber ducky swim trunks instead of a wetsuit? Probably not. And if I were to do another Ironman in the future, all the research that I would do the second time around would actually make sense to me because I have experience and actual knowledge that I could attach the new research onto, so that it would actually stick and make sense. So the 80-20 principle is super valuable in the research phase because with just a tiny bit of research, you can create your action plan and identify your areas of weakness. So during the next phase here, this is where the 80-20 principle is not useful. It's called the action phase. This is not, the 80-20 principle is not the way you should be thinking during the action phase of any new big endeavor or discipline. This is because to achieve massive goals, or something big and scary, it requires an insane amount of volume. And it requires an insane amount of volume of the right activities to become proficient and become better than most people. And so in the learning and research phase, you should have spent that 80-20 to get and identify the right action or activity that you need to be taking for this new goal or discipline. So here's the example. If you want to run a 100-miler, you need to slowly build up to running 60, 70, maybe 80, even 100 miles a week for some people. That amount of running volume takes a lot of time. There is no shortcutting it. You cannot escape the miles. There's no such thing as I'll do 20% of the running that gives me 80% of the results. If that shortcut existed, that would just be the path that everybody takes to do the thing. So that doesn't exist. And once you know the action that you need to take, which is running every single day, then that's what you have to do, and you can't escape the volume. So you can't think in the 80-20 principle during that phase. So for me, I have a 100-miler coming up in a couple weeks. It's called the Burning River 100. It's back in Ohio where I'm from, and I've actually failed this race twice before. And by the way, when you're trying to achieve really big goals and you're trying to do them really fast, sometimes you fail. When I first started running and I first tried this race, I had never run. I think the furthest I had ran was like 2 miles at the time. I'm in good shape. I had an athletic background, but I went from 2 miles to I think 6 to 8 to 13 to 26, and then tried 100 after that. And I did that all within like under a 3-month period of time. And I think this was back in 2020 over COVID. And I actually completed the 100-mile distance at that point, but I missed the cutoff time. I didn't get an official finish. So I DNF'd at that race, and a huge lack of experience on my end, huge lack of knowledge. I didn't understand my body. I didn't understand the pacing and all this other stuff, and I ended up falling short. But did I really? I mean, like I still ran 100 miles. Yes, I fell short, and that's why I'm going back now to do this. But I learned so much from that experience, and it's the same thing with the Ironman. Now any of these things, when I go back to it another time, all the tips from the running coach, the advice, the YouTube videos you watch, all of it starts to click because you actually have the experience to attach that stuff onto. So the point is, I only did a few months of training leading up to that first race, and I was going from basically 2 miles to 100 as quickly as I could. And so what do you guys think I spent most of my time on? Do you think I sat there and was researching nutrition and was researching how to optimize my gear and my aid station time? No, of course not. I had no time. I was trying to do this. I spent all of my time during that phase just running. That's it. Of course, maybe I listened to some YouTube videos or some motivational, whatever. But I spent all my time running because that's the time that I had allocated. And there's no shortcutting the amount of running that you need to start to try to do if you're going to try to achieve that as the goal. So this is a reminder that if you're going to be going after multiple goals all at once, you need to understand where you can cut corners and where you cannot. for completing a 100-mile run, you have to do the runs. And the runs take a lot of time. So all the other stuff is discretionary. Put your shoes on, go outside and run. That's all you got to do. Just do that a lot. So that's the same with most of these massive goals. Like once you identify the action, the activity, throw that 80-20 principle out of your mind and just do ridiculous amounts of volume of that right activity. So thank you guys for listening. If you guys have made it all the way to the end, congrats. I appreciate you listening to me rant on the subject. And as promised, I will share my list of interests, goals, dreams, disciplines for you guys to check out if you don't have any ideas of your own to go after right now. You guys should get one of these. It's called the Big Ass Calendar. Basically, it's a year at a glance calendar. I think it's amazing because I can put all my big goals for the year on that thing, and I can also list out like big, my training plans or trips or travel or whatever I'm trying to do at the time. So that's another big tool that I kind of use that you guys would benefit from. So grab one of those, set your 3 big rocks, and get after it. If you guys liked the video, you know the deal. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.